Good evening, everyone. It's Wednesday. It's the 15th of January. And I'm outside the council house in Atherstone, South Street, where there's just been an extraordinary general meeting of the full council of North Warwickshire Borough. So what is an extraordinary general meeting? Well, that's when there is business that has to be conducted within a certain time frame, and it won't necessarily get done in relation to the other council meetings. And that tonight related specifically to the matter of boundary changes in relation to wards within North Warwickshire Borough Council. Now, there has been a certain amount of discussion or people suggesting that this consultation that led to the report that we're voting on tonight being led to us, Waterorton being part of Birmingham or whatever, or Solihull or whatever. Now, that consultation in relation to boundary changes never had any such relevance at all. I voted in favour of the boundary change report because it made no changes to Waterorton. I'll take a screenshot at some point and post it on Twitter, X, Blue Sky, whatever it is nowadays, that details exactly the page that relates to Waterorton. We had two councillors before, we're going to have two councillors now, but what particularly pleased me following the engagement in this consultation is that it takes note of Waterorton's distinct village character and its separateness from neighbouring settlements, so that we're bordered around, and therefore we're a self-contained entity and should be treated as such, which is good. So even though we are slightly smaller than the ideal and the median, because like you have an average and then you get 10% variance, and we're within the, we're on the lower side, but we're within the variance, that we're taking that into consideration. But I'm really pleased that that's the case, and that got voted through. However, that wasn't necessarily the main thrust of the meeting, or the main thrust of everyone's attendance here tonight, because it's been in the news, it's been in the press from just before Christmas, the proposed matters relating to devolution and local government reform, which basically says that Tier 2 local authorities and Tier 1 local authorities are basically looking to get replaced by a single unitary authority. So what is a unitary authority, and what are Tier 1 and Tier 2 councils? So within Warwickshire, we have three tiers of local government. We have the county council, and they deal with big ticket items such as highways, social care, social work, education, highways. Have I said highways already? But the big ticket items, the really expensive stuff, and they take up the majority of your council tax. If you get your council tax bill, you're looking at £2,000 towards them on a Band D property. North Warwickshire Borough Council is what we deal with here. They deal with things that are more local in nature, but they're not very. We actually don't deal with that much here. So they deal with leisure services, they deal with planning, they deal with bin and waste collections and recycling. Important issues, really, really important in terms of what people are concerned about, but not as wide-ranging. And in terms of council tax, you'd be looking around 200 and 300 quid a year. And the third tier local government is your parish council, which is really hyper-local kind of stuff and deals with just, the green spaces that are owned by the parish council and those assets. Whereas what is proposed is that if you look at certain, I grew up in Warsaw, and there we've always had a unitary, well, I say we've always, but during my lifetime, it's pretty much always been a unitary local authority where you have one local authority that deals with everything. And you have one set of councillors, and you have one. You don't necessarily have one office, because you can still deliver things on a local basis, and remember time in neighbourhood plans and neighbourhood offices or whatever. But basically, you have one council that delivers everything, and that is one of the proposed models for local government. And then there's a question around, being part of wider areas with mayors, and such as the combined authority and where we sit. Now, we had, ahead of the council meeting tonight, we had a briefing in relation to what's basically proposed, and there was still an awful lot of saying, we don't know yet, we don't know yet, we don't know yet, and in terms of what the feelings are. There are certain issues when it comes to Warwickshire and what is it going to look like. One of those is that the size of area that's going to be involved. there's not a great feeling there was not a great feeling within the chamber tonight across everyone that we just want to be part of a big Warwickshire, because we feel that that we don't get decent services from Warwickshire as it is, and that's not going to get any better should they become Warwickshire Plus. So there was that kind of concern. The points that I raised in the meeting is that you don't know how long this reorganisation is going to take, and we have a responsibility, and what we're elected to do here is to deliver the services as are those important local services such as waste and grounds and housing, social housing as well, and planning. And this level of uncertainty is going to lead to uncertainty amongst the staffing group, and they might start looking elsewhere. And the people who you lose in those kind of situations, because I've seen this being part of organisations myself, is that when there is uncertainty and there's talk of potential redundancies, if there are, or reorganisations, is that the level of uncertainty when you don't have definite is that people fill in the gaps themselves, and people want security, particularly when it comes to their jobs, and you end up losing staff. And the people you tend to lose are the ones that you don't want to lose. Is that you do get two kinds. Some just cling on for dear life, but so there's all kinds of things. So I did push that we do need to take significant steps to ensure the ongoing delivery of services here, and also to see that any medium and long-term plans that were put into place for this and our services do get taken forward into any new local authority. What that local authority might look like, again, is that there's talk about Warwickshire Plus, but also when the government, when they're proposing these details, they wrote to those areas with two-tier local authorities and neighbouring small unitaries. So unitary councils they're looking at are going to be of a certain size, or above a certain size, or of course there's always variance, and of course these things are open to interpretation, but the initial feeling is around 500,000 people for a unitary. And there are two unitaries near to us that don't meet that number right now, one of which is Solihull and one of which is Coventry. So is there any potential is the wrong word, but is there potential dealings where Warwickshire in itself gets sliced up and gets parcelled around? Could we have a unitary authority that is solely Hull, North Warwickshire and Tamworth? Could we have one where Coventry joins with Nuneaton and Bedworth? And in some ways that these are, interesting discussions to have, and the merits and counteractions have to be against. Now, the other points that I made in these meetings is that there needs to be a consultation. People need to be consulted. People need to have the ability to have their point of view. Part of that is that any proposed cancellation of local elections in May, not cancellation, postponement of local elections, which I originally thought, well, that makes sense if we don't know what's going to be here. Whoever's going to be designing these services needs to have a fresh mandate. And therefore to have people who've been in post for 4 years who actually you might not want to be your councillor anymore, I don't think that's necessarily good. So first of all is that I think that we should be hoping for elections to take place in 2025. Maybe not in May now, but certainly June, July, August. So some kind of time when there might be certain more detail or a greater understanding. I also pushed for the fact that there needs to be a consultation event, even though there's not going to be any consultation necessarily coming from county in relation to these. I think that if North Warwickshire is going to go around the negotiating table, we need to engage with our residents to go and see what they feel. Particularly right now as people are feeling disengaged with political decisions, and there is a feeling like that, there's some weird conspiracy theories out there. They're not true. It's basically, well, I'm not aware of it. Anyway, but I think that people, want to feel engaged and they want to feel that they've got a voice. And if they ain't necessarily going to get a vote, they certainly want to have the opportunity to put their views forward and for those to be considered. While that was acknowledged and accepted, I didn't feel that there was an overall will to make that happen. I did propose that there were different ways of doing it via parishes and villages and town councils or whatever. But considering the borough council can have consultations where you get 3 officers stood in empty church hall for an afternoon. I don't know why we can't replicate that when it's just necessarily just taking viewpoints of what people feel. I know that there's going to be automatic pushback because people don't necessarily like change. Yeah, but again, is that I just want to know what's going to be the best methodology for delivering the services that we want to receive. You know, what's going to deliver to us greatest value in terms of council tax? Because what I tell you now is, my feeling is this, is that if we were designing how we were going to deliver these services now, we wouldn't have the structure that we've got. But what you want to make sure is that you end up with a structure that is actually fit for purpose, you know, rather than one that you've rushed into and doesn't deliver. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learnt, but I think that the desire to deliver better local services is something that we should all be getting behind. So there were those frank conversations, you know, behind closed doors, you know, to start with, in terms of a briefing. I thought it was very interesting because although I don't know the reasons for apologies that were brought, I know that there are some parish council meetings tonight or whatever, but the attendance at today's meeting wasn't massive. You know, it wasn't full there, which at recent meetings it has been when contentious issues have been raised. So I do feel, you know, come on guys. It's important that people feel that they're represented as well. However, what the end outcome was is that it was proposed that there be a working group and a cross-party working group. And that is made up of 5 Conservatives, 3 from Labour, 1 from the Dordon Independents, and 1 of the single independent councillors in North Warwickshire. Hello, that's me. So it was interesting that my seat has come at the expense in that structure of a Labour councillor, and I was indebted to the leader of the Labour group, who immediately stood up and said, well, we support this, not necessarily in relation to me, but just the fact that they wanted there to be a cross-party group and with the numbers, because it, you know, it's personally, I think that if it's not a party political issue, which we keep being told it is, why are we doing it in line with the structures? Why isn't this just like a leaders consultative committee where we invite others to attend? I don't know, because it sort of dropped on us, really. But anyway, I've been invited and I've accepted, and I placed on note my thanks for that involvement. And I'd like to think that I can add value, you know, is I've worked for a unitary authority, you know, is that I've overseen change processes, and also I'm aware of the difficulties and the pressures that are faced by staff during periods of change such as this, and the impact that that can have on services. And that's what I'm here to do, is to make sure that our services are not impacted or are improved. My God, could you imagine that? That actually we don't spend all of our time trying to work out what to do, how to make things less bad, but actually improve things for the better, because that's what our role should be. And also to represent and empower people to have their say. So, there are choices. There are things out there. Thanks for listening. As always, comments gratefully received. But yeah, take care and Happy New Year. I think that's probably going to be the last time I say that in 2025. But there you go. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.